Drunk client covers himself in SH and passes out on couch. A few years ago, say 2006, I was working and living on a small island in the Caribbean. I lived alone in a 3-bedroom family apartment in town. Occasionally I would have family that would come for vacation on said island and stay at the apartment I was living at. The company I worked for was a small distribution company that serviced the alcohol industry. At the time, my boss wanted to sell off one of the beer lines he had carried to another distribution company located on another island about a 15-minute plane ride away, so he had set up a meeting with a guy we will call JC, that was the son of the owner of the distribution company that was interested in purchasing the beer line. He was roughly mid-30s at this time and his family was very wealthy. From my understanding, one of the wealthiest families on his island. He was set to fly in on a Friday morning, have his meeting, then fly out in the evening. At the same time, I had an uncle that was on vacation with his wife and 3 kids that were staying with me at the apartment. He has twins that were around 4 and another kid that was about 1 or so. Remember this, so JC flies in and I greet him at the airport. I then drive him to the office to meet my boss. My uncle is also a friend of the boss and sits in on the meeting. They talk for a few hours or so and then they decide to grab some lunch before his 4 p.m. flight. I join them for lunch, and they have a few drinks while eating. A few drinks eventually turned into many drinks and they lose track of time. JC realizes that he can't make his flight in time and calls the airline to schedule a flight out first thing in the morning and I would be tasked with taking him. No big deal. We decide that he can crash at the family apartment as the room I am staying in has 2 double-sized beds. My uncle and his wife in one room, kids in another, and JC and I would share the 3rd room. We eventually head back to the office and decide that later we are going to go to a restaurant and have dinner to entertain our guest. Dinner time arrives and we head to a nice restaurant to have some food and a few drinks. We carry on and hit a few bars, take him to the local strip club and just keep going until we call it a night. We get back home at 3 a.m. I am plastered and turn to JC and say, "Listen, I'm tired, going to call it a night, you have to be at the airport at 6 a.m. He tells me he is going to stay up and watch some TV because he won't be able to sleep. I say no problem and head off to bed. Suddenly I am woken up from my sleep. I look up and see my uncle, my aunt and their 3 kids all in my room with a look of shock on their faces. I am in total confusion because at this point, I am still drunk, and only had 2 to 3 hours sleep. My first though was that I slept through my alarm and JC missed his flight. So I ask what's wrong? To which my uncle replied, "Come with me." I stumble out of bed and begin following him out of the bedroom, past his shook family and down the hallway that leads to the living area. What I see next will forever be engraved into my mind. You ready for this? I see JC, passed out on the couch, completely naked with his belt still on, his clothes folded neatly on the coffee table and from head to toe, he is completely covered in SH. Human feces. In his hair. On his face, his torso, his legs, even hand smudges on the walls besides the couch. The smell that captured my nostrils was so horrendous it sobered me up in an instant. The lack of sleep was gone completely. I stood there in complete shock as I witnessed this. My uncle turned to me and said, "Grab a leg." As we walked closer to the couch, I noticed an empty bottle of vodka on the ground that did not immediately register. Dragged him off the couch onto the ground and pulled him directly to the bathroom shower where we just threw on the shower head and walked out. There was literally a trail of smeared shit that led from the couch to the shower when we dragged him, almost like he was a paintbrush and the shit was paint. We then began to assess the damage in the living room. The empty vodka bottle had caught my eye again and then it suddenly dawned on me. I had an unopened bottle of vodka that I kept in the freezer. Nah, this motherfucker wouldn't do that. I said to myself. How could he possibly go in and dig through someone's freezer, and it is impossible for him to drink it all. As I proceed to the kitchen and the first thing I notice is a puddle of pee right next to the freezer. I step over it and open the freezer. This man, coming home at 3 a.m. plastered drunk, decided it was a great idea to drink an entire bottle of someone else's vodka. I was lost for words at this point. My uncle then grabs a mop and heads to the shower. In curiosity I follow him only to see him using the mop like a scrubbing brush to begin to remove the SH from his skin. We throw some clothes, my clothes mind you, onto him and then carry him downstairs to the car. As I take him to the airport, my aunt and uncle tackle the cleaning of the house. As I pulled up to the airport, I remember exactly his face as I was leaning over to open the passenger side door. Pure misery as he was half asleep and still drunk as you can imagine. I open the door and push him out, pull back in the passenger door and drive off. When I return to the apartment, I see the entire couch already on the sidewalk to be collected by the rubbish truck. My aunt at this point did a great job at mopping and sanitizing the floor. I ask my uncle, how in the hell did you come to find him like this? Did you happen to wake up early and just see him like this? Here is the best part, that his twins usually wake up early and watch cartoons on a morning. They are at the age where they can navigate themselves out of their beds and turn on the TV to not disturb them. And the kids innocently walking in the living room that morning were the first to see and immediately ran into their room and said, "Mommy, Daddy, there is a naked man on the couch." He then flew out of bed in confusion and ran out to find him this way. Passed out, naked and with pee showing on the TV. The pee might explain why he decided to get naked. However, the belt still on thing baffles me to this day. To wrap up the story, I never saw JC again after that. Have no clue if he ever knew what happened. He did in fact purchase the beer line from my boss, and we will never know if guilt made him buy it. Subscribe.